Hey everyone, and welcome to Crossroads Going Deeper, the Easter edition. And we had a great Easter Sunday, and I'm joined here by my friend Michele, and we're going to take the theme of Easter this past year at Crossroads and dig a little bit deeper. And the theme was interrupted, which I'm sure you're never interrupted in your life. Your life is always calm, no interruptions, right?
Sure.
What are some interruptions you deal with?
Oh, my favorite interruptions are my 6 grandchildren. And, going from 16 down to age 2 and whatever they want at the moment is the most important thing. So no matter what I'm doing, if they want a drink of juice, if they want to put their shoes on and go outside, if they want to play a game of Monopoly Junior, whatever they need to do at the moment, that's what we have to do.
Well, there could be worse interruptions.
Yes,
that's for
absolutely.
Sure. So,
absolutely.
This past Easter, just this past week, we talked about interruptions and how Easter, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, was the greatest interruption in all of human history. And we talked a little bit about when Jesus shared that he was going to go and die, he was going to be crucified, different people responded different ways to that interruption in their lives. Yes. And the same is true today. But there was one passage that we looked at that was really a picture of that. 2 different groups of people responding different ways. Mary on the one hand, and then Judas and the disciples on the other. Why don't you read the passage that we looked at this past Sunday?
Sure. So this is Matthew 26, and I'm starting in verse 6. While Jesus was in Bethany in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured out on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her."
Yeah, here we are, still talking about Mary. And then if you want to continue the story directly after that, we talked about this on Sunday, Judas goes and instead of giving a gift, receives 30 coins and sells Jesus out.
Right.
So one person is giving something extravagant, this alabaster jar worth a lot of money, and then the other person receiving sells Jesus out. And these are 2 very opposite reactions to Easter. Why is it, and I think we all read this story, and I think most of us kind of think, okay, if the teams are, or the sides are, the disciples who were indignant with this woman, and then Judas who goes and betrays, so that's the one side, or Mary who has this beautiful display of love, care, and affection for Jesus, we're all like, I vote for Mary, why is that? Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think because Mary is doing something beautiful. Mary is doing something loving, and that's what we want to be.
Right.
Mary is great, and she's not being selfish, and none of us want to appear to be selfish. We want, when they tell our story, plus we want our story to keep going.
Right.
And when people tell our stories, we want to look good.
Right. I mean, in that same, as you were speaking, it reminded me too, Michele, that it's so easy after the fact to see how we could have done better or gotten it. But in the scene, in that moment, so often that's when we seem like we kind of miss it. And so it's easy to look at the disciples kind of Monday morning quarterback. And but if we were right there at the table that very first moment when this was all unfolding and she, makes this sacrifice, $40,000 sacrifice, I think my first reaction probably would have been like, $40,000? What are you doing? That's a lot of money.
Right.
So I don't know. That was my first thought. Is just in hindsight, it's easy. But.
Yep, absolutely. So yes, and you said on Sunday, I remember you said that Easter or the resurrection is still an interruption today.
Right.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Of course, yeah. So I love this idea, and what we saw in the scene, Mary responds, it was an interruption. Jesus shares that he's going to go and be crucified. That was an interruption to their plans.
Yeah.
And even today, Easter is still an interruption. Easter in history was the greatest single disruption, interruption in all time. It's still disrupting history. In fact, we mark history before Christ and after Christ because what happened was so significant, and the impact and the ripple effect in power structures and cultural norms. I mean, what we call Judeo-Christian values even today have shaped our country, all of Western society. The idea of freedom and individual liberty and the value of each person, all of that comes from, well, if Jesus was willing to die on the cross for us, then wow, each person must have individual value. But then also the cross forces each one of us today to make a decision. If we believe that Jesus came and died for us and then rose again, you have to it forces us to say, do I believe that or not? And so it is an interruption whenever you understand what the claim that Jesus made was, and we all have to make a decision about how we're going to respond to that, really. So, and then I love this, what we kind of ended with on Sunday was the idea that Mary responded, and then Mary is the one who is at the tomb, the first person to encounter the resurrected Jesus. And then the ripple effect of her story continues. She made this impact initially whenever she made this sacrificial gift in front of all these people, but then Jesus says, now go and share. Go and share this good news that I've come back from the dead. And talk about forcing people, what are you going to do? I mean, that was really what she was tasked with. Go and share the good news, the gospel. So talk a little bit about that. I know, we've talked a little bit about the impact that your life has made. I've seen that personally firsthand just a couple weeks ago. If you were there on Sunday at Westminster, Michele brought up kind of a whole crew of people that you've been able to pour into some women in your life, and then the ripple effect. You've gone and shared the gospel, and then the ripple effect that we've seen of that, of your story impacting another story. So talk a little bit about that.
So I think that point where I heard the message, where I heard the gospel, was an interruption in my life. I had been floating along. I come from a recovery background, and I was doing okay. But when I heard the love, when I heard the gospel, that totally changed my life. And I got that love from a friend. And I was just bursting. I was so bursting with this love of Christ that I wanted to share it. And so as I met young women in the recovery community and I shared with them, I would share with one person, and she started coming to church, and then she shared with somebody else, and that person started coming to church. And now we have this group, and we're all in recovery together, and we're all following Jesus, and we can love on each other and hold each other accountable and do life together.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's one story impacts another story, impacts another story, and what we see is really a ripple effect. And that was true for Mary. Mary was the first person who went and shared the gospel, and then here we are now, thousands of years later. Think about the ripple effect of the people that Mary shared the gospel with, and maybe even some of us are in that kind of spiritual lineage, really, of Mary sharing from the very beginning. And so our ask, our encouragement to each one of you is to go and share your story. There's going to be information on how to do exactly that. Tellmystory.one, and go to that website, share exactly what God's done in your life, and learn about how to do that. There's a whole website that walks you through that process. And you might be the first person in a ripple effect, because a ripple has to start with one thing, one person, that stone that the ripple starts. So maybe that could be you this week. Hey, thanks so much. Have a great week. Make sure you're living on the other side of the empty tomb and the resurrection this week and the potential and the hope that we have in Jesus. God bless. Have a good one.